Everyone saw the same story this week. And I mean everyone. The handshake, the meeting at Highgrove, Harry and King Charles, finally in the same room after everything. The children, Archie and Lilibet, meeting their grandfather. And then the quiet trip to Althorp, to Diana's grave, the moment that had half the internet reaching for tissues. You've seen that story. I've told you that story. It was real, and it mattered. But here's the thing about stories like this one. When everyone is looking at the same spot, the handshake, the hug, the children, nobody is looking anywhere else. And sometimes the most important part of a story is happening exactly where nobody is looking. So let me ask you a question. In all of that footage, in all of those reports, in all of those warm, hopeful, carefully sourced accounts of the reconciliation week, where was Meghan? Think about it. Really, think. Can you picture her at Highgrove? Can you picture her at any public moment of that trip? You can picture Harry. You can picture the kids. But Meghan is strangely, almost eerily hard to place. And now we might know why. Because according to insiders, and I'll be careful with this word, insiders, we'll talk about who's saying what, Meghan came home from Britain feeling not hopeful, not relieved, not moved. She came home feeling humiliated. Humiliated. That's the word. Not disappointed, not tired, humiliated. Which means that everything we watched this week, the whole warm, healing, family comes together story, had a second layer running underneath it the entire time. A layer nobody was filming. A layer where one member of that family experienced the exact same trip as something closer to an ordeal. So that's what we're doing today. We're going to go back through this entire visit, moment by moment. But this time, we're not going to watch Harry. We're not going to watch Charles. We're going to watch the person the cameras kept missing. Because I think when you see this trip through Meghan's eyes, the fairy tale starts to look very, very different. Stay with me. You watched this story once. Now watch where you weren't looking. Before we can flip the picture, we need the picture itself. So let's rebuild it. The official version, the one the world got. Because I want you to see how good this story was. How complete it felt. That's exactly what makes what's underneath it so striking. Here's the week as it was given to us. Harry flies to Britain, and this time he's not alone. Meghan is with him. Archie is with him. Lilibet is with him. The whole family on British soil together for the first time in years. That alone was headline material. These children had become almost mythical in the UK, talked about constantly, seen almost never. Then, the centerpiece, Highgrove. Harry and the children spend time with King Charles, and by every account that reached the press, it goes well. Better than well. Sources close to Harry reach for big words. They say he feels enormous hope. They call the meeting a first step in a long process. Careful words, diplomatic words, but warm ones. After years of lawsuits and memoirs and interviews and silence, warm words were news all by themselves. And then the moment that took the story from political to human. Harry takes Archie and Lilibet to Althorp, the Spencer estate, his mother's childhood home. The island on the lake where Diana is buried. 2 children, standing at the grave of a grandmother they never met, brought there by a father who was 12 when he lost her. You put those 3 beats together, the return, the reconciliation, the remembrance, and you have a nearly perfect story. Broken family begins to heal. Son comes home. Grandchildren meet their grandfather. And the woman at the center of all the old wounds, Diana, is honored instead of fought over. The press told it that way. Frankly, most of us received it that way. I made a whole video living inside that version of events, and I stand by every word of it. Because for Harry, and for those children, I believe that version was true. But go back through that story I just told you. Count the people in it. Harry, Charles, Archie, Lilibet, Diana present in her absence. One person made that entire trip, every flight, every car, every room, and somehow appears in almost none of the scenes we just walked through. Meghan was there the whole time. So why does the official story barely need her to exist? That's not an accident. And that's where we're going next. So let's do it. Let's rewind the tape and run the whole week again, but this time, keep your eyes on Meghan. The family arrives in Britain. Already, pause right there. Because for Harry, that arrival is a homecoming. Complicated, painful, loaded, but a homecoming. This is the country where he grew up, where his mother is buried, where his father is king. Every road sign means something to him. Now stand next to Meghan in that same moment. What is Britain for her? It's the country whose press hounded her from the moment her name became public. The country she has said made her feel unwelcome, unprotected, unseen. The country she left, and let's be honest about this, the country she fled. She has been back only a handful of times since, and almost always for funerals, jubilees, duty, never for warmth. So the plane lands, and two people walk off it into two completely different countries. He's coming home. She's returning to the scene. Then comes Highgrove, and here's where it gets interesting, because look at how that meeting was described. Sources spoke about Harry and the children spending time with the king, the children meeting their grandfather, Harry feeling enormous hope. Meghan's presence was mentioned, briefly, technically, the way you mentioned someone in a group photo caption. She was there. That's all we really got. She was there. No detail about a conversation between Meghan and Charles. No warm quote about the king and his daughter-in-law. Nothing about her being welcomed, embraced, included. And when briefings are this carefully managed, and believe me, on both sides of this family, every syllable is managed. Silence is never just silence. Silence is information. Then the public side of the trip. Harry was visible, the children were carefully, tastefully visible, and Meghan held back, stayed in the shadows, skipped the public moments almost entirely. At the time, that was easy to explain. Protocol, we said. Sensitivity. She's being careful not to pull focus, not to turn a family reconciliation into a media circus. Smart, disciplined, respectful. That was the reading. But there was always another possible reading. That she wasn't stepping back. That she was being kept back. Or, maybe the most human version, that she simply could not bear to stand and smile in the middle of a celebration she was not truly part of. Because here's a simple truth about being invisible. Sometimes invisibility is a choice, and sometimes it's the thing that's done to you, quietly, politely, without anyone ever having to say a word. Which version was it for Meghan? For a while, we could only guess. Then the word leaked out. One single word. And it answered the question in the most brutal way possible. Humiliated. According to insiders, that is how Meghan felt during this trip. Not on the sidelines by choice, not gracefully stepping back. Humiliated. I want to slow down on this word because words in royal reporting are never accidental. Sources don't reach for the strongest word in the dictionary by mistake. If someone close to Meghan wanted to signal mild discomfort, there are a dozen softer options. Frustrated, overlooked, uncomfortable, hurt even. Every one of those words was available. Somebody chose humiliated. And humiliation is a very specific emotion. You can feel hurt alone in a room. You can feel disappointed by an outcome, but humiliation needs an audience. Humiliation is what happens when your lowered status is visible, when you are made small in front of other people, and everyone present understands exactly what just happened. So the question becomes, what could have made Meghan feel that way on that trip in front of those people? Let me be straight with you about what we know and what we don't. The reports don't give us a scene. There's no confirmed moment, no quote, no specific incident we can point to and say, this is it. This is where it happened. Anyone who tells you they know exactly what happened behind those doors is selling you something. I'm not going to do that. But we can look at the architecture of the trip, the things we can verify, and see how much of it points in the same direction. She traveled to a country that spent years treating her as the villain of the story. She sat out the public moments while her husband and children were welcomed and celebrated. The warm briefings that followed, enormous hope, first step, long process, were built around Harry and Charles, around father and son, around grandchildren and grandfather. The reconciliation, as narrated, had clearly defined roles for everyone in the family. Everyone except her. And think about what that means in practice. This reconciliation, if it continues, will reportedly move slowly, step by step, trust rebuilt in stages. And in every account of it, the bridge being rebuilt runs between Harry and his father. The children cross that bridge naturally. They're children, they're innocent, they're wanted. But nobody, in any briefing from any side, has described a bridge being built toward Meghan. She stood at the door of that fairy tale holding her children's coats while the story happened without her. If that's even half true, humiliated stops sounding like an exaggeration. It starts sounding like precision. And here's the detail that makes this even heavier. This wasn't a summit between strangers. This was family. The humiliation, if that's what it was, didn't come from tabloids this time, or from trolls, or from anonymous palace briefers of years past. It came baked into the structure of a family event, into who was greeted and how, into whose name appeared in the warm quotes and whose didn't. The tabloids she could fight. She has fought them, in court, and won. But how do you fight an invitation that includes you without wanting you? Now, if you've followed this family for years, you might be feeling something like déjà vu right now. A woman inside this system, present at every event, technically included, quietly shut out. We have seen this before. And that's exactly where we need to go next. Because Meghan's week in Britain makes a lot more sense when you remember whose family she married into and what happened to the last woman who didn't fit. Let's widen the lens. Because Meghan's week in Britain wasn't one bad trip. It was one more chapter in a story that's been running for nearly a decade. The story of a woman who married into a family and was never allowed to actually join it. Go back to the beginning. When Meghan first appeared, the machine seemed to embrace her. The fairy tale wedding, the global broadcast, an American actress in St. George's Chapel, a gospel choir in Windsor. Remember how that was sold to us? A new era, a modern monarchy. The institution congratulated itself on her arrival. And then, almost immediately, the temperature dropped. The press coverage turned, and turned vicious. The stories got smaller and meaner. And through all of it, and this is the part that matters for our story today, the family stayed quiet. The institution that had machinery to defend everyone somehow never quite got around to defending her. She has said, in her own words, that the system didn't just fail to protect her, that at her lowest point, she wasn't sure she wanted to be alive anymore. That's on the record. That's not an insider whispering. That's her, on camera. So when this family gathers now, years later, to begin healing, understand what they are healing from, and who paid the highest price while the wound was open. And here's the cruel geometry of this reconciliation. For the family to come back together, the years of conflict have to be quietly folded away. Nobody relitigates the interviews. Nobody rereads the memoir aloud at dinner. The past gets wrapped in polite silence. That's how families like this one make peace. But think about what that silence costs Meghan specifically. Because in the tabloid version of history, the version much of Britain absorbed for years, she isn't a victim of the conflict. She's the cause of it. The woman who took Harry away, the outsider who broke the family. That narrative is unfair, it's lazy, and it ignores everything Harry has said about his own choices. He has insisted over and over that leaving was his decision, driven by what happened to his mother. But the narrative exists. It's in the air of every room she enters in that country. So a reconciliation where nothing is said out loud doesn't just skip over Meghan's pain. It quietly leaves the old story standing. Harry comes home, and it's a homecoming. Meghan comes with him, and half the country sees the villain arriving at the scene of her crime. Now put yourself in her position at Highgrove. Physically, in the room. Your husband is being welcomed back with enormous hope. Your children are being adored, as they should be. And you are standing there, knowing that some meaningful part of the goodwill in that room, some part of the country's happiness at this reunion, is built on a version of events where you were the problem. Nobody has to say a single unkind word to you. The structure says it for them. For Harry, this trip was recovering something he lost. For Archie and Lilibet, it was discovering something new. A grandfather, a country, a grave with their grandmother's name. Every member of that family gained something in Britain, except one. The one who had lost the most there, and had the least reason to believe this visit would be different. Harry got his father back, at least the beginning of him. The children got a grandfather and a heritage, and Meghan got a reminder, polite, wordless, immaculately mannered, of exactly where the boundary of this family runs, and which side of it she's on.
So we end where stories like this always seem to end in that family, with a question that nobody inside it wants to ask out loud. Can you ever truly return to a family where you were never truly welcome? For Harry, the answer this week seemed to be yes. Carefully, slowly, one meeting at a time. And I genuinely hope that's real. Whatever you think of the Sussexes, a son reconciling with his father before it's too late is not something to sneer at. Harry has already lost one parent. He knows better than almost anyone what it costs to run out of time. But a family is not two people, and a reconciliation that works for the son while humiliating his wife isn't a resolution. It's a fault line. It's peace built directly on top of the crack that broke everything the first time. Because remember why they left. Strip away all the noise, all the documentaries and headlines, and the reason was simple. Harry believed the institution would grind his wife down the way it ground his mother down, and he refused to stay and watch it happen. That was the whole story. Protecting Meghan wasn't a side effect of leaving. It was the point. So look at what this new peace quietly asks of him. Come home. Bring the children. Rebuild the bond with your father. And your wife? She can come too, of course. She can stand nearby. She can wait. The system will absorb Harry back in pieces, but the one piece it has never known what to do with is the woman he left to protect. Which means Harry may soon face a version of the exact choice he already made once. Last time, it was the institution or Meghan, and he chose Meghan. And it cost him his country, his role, and very nearly his family. Now the door back is opening, warmly, invitingly. But if the price of walking through it is that his wife stands in the cold on the other side, feeling, in her own words, as reported, humiliated, then it's not really a new choice at all. It's the same one, wearing kinder clothes. And if this reporting is accurate, Meghan already knows it. That's the part I can't stop thinking about. She got on that plane anyway. She stood in the shadows of a country that despises her, at a celebration that didn't include her,
so that her husband could hug his father and her children could meet their grandfather. You can call that many things. Weakness isn't one of them. Maybe that's the real ending of this story, for now. Not the handshake at Highgrove, not even the grave at Althorp, but a woman on a plane home to California, having given her family a week that gave her nothing back. The fairy tale happened this week. That part is true. The father and son, the grandchildren, the hope, all of it real. But every fairy tale has someone standing at the edge of the ballroom, watching. This week, we found out who. So here's my question for you, and I genuinely want to know what you think, because this one splits people right down the middle. Was Meghan humiliated by this family? Or is this leak itself a move, a way of reminding everyone that her side of the story isn't going anywhere? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one, and the conversation under these videos is honestly half the reason I make them. And if you want the next chapter of this story told this way, slowly, carefully, watching the places the cameras don't point, subscribe, and leave a like so I know this angle matters to you. Because this story isn't over. A long process, they called it. And if this week taught us anything, it's that the most important parts of that process will be the ones happening exactly where nobody is looking. See you in the next one.